Hey, it's Matt. Welcome to Unbearable 73. Let's make a slight adjustment here. A jube, to use a French for I adjust, which is from chess. I don't know that. So, now it's time for Sharpe's Gold, Season 3, Episode 1. Yeah, that one. Okay. So let's before we get into this, there's two things to talk about. If you're curious like me, what happened to Sharpe's daughter, um, I was waiting for the episodes to see how it evolved, but then I noticed that the episodes were moving away from Spain, and I'm like, which I'll get. Well, the third thing I'll talk about, I guess, is where in the Napoleonic War this is. Um, so the first thing to say is apparently in the novel, Sharpe's daughter with Teresa is given to Teresa's sister and raised as if it's Teresa's sister and her husband's daughter. So Sharpe never goes back, but I believe so. But the character is mentioned again, from what I understand, like when there's a time jump in the future. Okay, so that's kind of what. And then Sharpe eventually maybe gets married again to another woman. I'm not sure all the details. Obviously, I haven't read the books and only seen three seasons. I know that the show stops well before the book stop, so to speak. Right. So there's that. Right. The next thing to talk about is where in the Napoleonic Wars we are. We're at the point where Napoleon's forces are retreating or being kicked out of or whatever from Spain, and the war is going into France. Wellington's leading the war into France. Okay, there's a lot of British deserters. You got to remember, war at the time, especially, more than half your soldiers were conscripts for the war. So they fought, they did what they had to do, but then when the chance to get away in foreign lands, they were like, yeah, I can live here. If they spent years or more there learning local language, they could disappear to the local countryside because Europeans look alike, so to speak, and just and never be heard from again and be presumed dead or whatever, you know. So there's a lot of desertion going on. That's where the provosts come in. You see early on there's some controversy. This feels like one of those single episodes that really would have been like felt like really 4 or 5 little like 20-minute episodes broken down. Um, it did not suffer as much from the problems. The one problem with the TV show that I noticed that I think is like there's not as much time gapping. Meaning, like in the previous episodes, almost all of them, events occurred between, like they'll show 2 events, but other stuff occurred between them because it had to have had for the logic to work, and you could just build in your mind that it occurred, right? That some battle was fought or whatever, you know. Um, and I always wonder if there's missing footage or when they wrote the scripts they just sort of pulled part stuff out of the book and presumably read the books or whatever. This episode you need to know almost nothing from anywhere else that's not in the thing. Yeah. So that's for the Napoleonic Wars, right? And there's all these deserters, and the provosts are around and trying to round them up, and they're executing some looters, and you'll see all that sort of stuff. And now Wellington wants to get his forces back up to an overwhelming edge, so he's willing to let the deserters give them a sort of pardon in the field if they return to service. Oh, excuse me. The third thing to know is, and I had to do research on this, okay? Because this was like, you're going to watch this and you'll know from the screenshot, like, well, you're going to say, man, why is there a picture of an Aztec idol laying on the side? Well, apparently there's an Aztec cult in this episode, right? So here's what I deduced from what I've read. Okay, the book itself has nothing to do with Aztecs. Okay, it's basically a spying mission with some partisans and also with the dealing with the deserters and all that, right? So Sean Bean originally wasn't Sharpe. It was Paul McGann was originally Sharpe, right? And Paul McGann, they've actually filmed with the original cast, Paul McGann and others. They had filmed some 1 or 2 episodes, enough to have not finished them, but come close to it. And this Sharpe's Goal was one of them. There was, right. So when it came around to do this again with Sean Bean, they couldn't use. They would have if they had used the same script. They would have to pay all those actors as if they were in this episode when none of them were. So they elected to basically rewrite it, and someone came up with the whole almost an X-Files episode of Sharpe, like where there's an Aztec cult in the mountains in Spain. You know, when the dude rides up with the conquistador armor in the beginning, and like a little funky going on, but you can see how they might want to, since there's a lot of sword fighting going on, wearing some armor would be beneficial, right? You're thinking that, and plus, it is now there's a point where this went away, but armor was resistant to musket fire. It was mass musket fire that made armor problematic. But individual muskets, the plates were off on plate armor off and thick enough to repel them. Right? So you could say when you see the first guy, you're like, okay, maybe that's why it's wearing the armor. There's all the hand-to-hand combat. The most muskets that you're using aren't going to penetrate that breastplate, right? And then someone even says it looks like they raided a museum. When we find out later though that they're apparently an Aztec cult in the partisans in this part of Spain formed an Aztec cult or something like that, and it's even commented on by several of the characters how it's strange, and it also drops some allusions to there being evil in the hills and things like a feeling of evil. So I gotta wonder that if the guy writing this maybe he was used to writing horror, like supernatural horror stuff, and just sort of made a close to being supernatural horror as he could without actually being supernatural horror. That's kind of what I'm thinking occurred here. So when you watch this, it's still a good episode. It's just really weird, okay? And it's nothing like the book from what I understand. So that being said, there's some great depictions here in this episode, which hopefully I'll be able to highlight, where, how do I put it? As they're going on their mission, which the premise is these Aztec cultists have captured a bunch of deserters, and then in the process of sacrificing them to their Aztec gods, right? And the Aztecs, by the way, if you want to call racism on this, the Aztecs were evil motherfuckers, okay? So when you study the actual history and the other surviving Indian tribes of the area will tell you, okay, the Aztecs conquered the local tribes, enslaved them, and were basically brutish slave masters who were sacrificing these enslaved tribes in their human sacrifice. It wasn't Aztecs being killed; it were these subjugated tribes. So when the conquistadors came, and then remember, the Aztecs wiped out all their old religions, so they were forced to worship the Aztec gods for decades and decades, or more centuries, or even. And so when the conquistadors came along, they were like, and they found the practice of the Aztecs barbaric, which you should. The other Indian tribes were, hey, we'll help you. We'll guide you to the dead. We'll fight with you. We'll guide you to the. Wait, you have this religion where you don't have to murder your sacrifice? Well, and they became Catholic, and so there's a lot of little, I guess you would say, woke washing of history when trying to paint the American Indians were just as brutish and violent as our European ancestors, as our African ancestors, as our human beings were barbarians. People know we were all barbarians, and we all behave almost identically, worldwide, despite the trappings of civilization and all that. So that's kind of all the stuff at play in this episode. And the deal here is, as I was saying, these faux Aztec cultists had, and I will call them Aztec cultists just to be, not to be safe or anything, but because they're not actual Aztecs. The Aztecs were a tribe. These are basically Spanish or possibly Mexican descendants who were taken to Spain, who have adopted a practice of maybe their ancestors or something they read in a book. Okay? That being said, so they have this. They're taking deserters captive to loot their wealth and sacrifice them to their gods, right? So they have and they know now that the British are trying to get their deserters back. So they go to Wellington and say, look, we have 50 deserters, and we'll give it back to you. We want rifles, and because he has an abundance of rifles, even though his rifle regiments need them, they want 50, which is nothing for the scale they're fighting at. He's like, shoot, 50 rifles for 50 men? I'll take that. If one of the differences, the red coats use muskets, the blue coats are riflemen. That's the difference, okay? At least as far as I can tell from, again, I'm not an expert in Napoleonic Wars or the history of the time. I just know little bits of it. And so Sharpe is sent on a mission to do the trade. In the midst of all that, the complicating factor is we meet, I think it's Wellington's sister or something like that, or his cousin and her daughter, who've come. They know that whose husband was a missionary in the area, who was doing something religious. I don't remember the whole deal. And they go to Wellington because they want help trying to find him. They're independent women. They're capable of shooting, and they're a little too confident, which comes about them in the butt. And how do I put it? So they sneak off and go with Sharpe, and then when Sharpe is done with his mission returning, they sneak off further and look for her husband and the other one's father, and then they get captured by the Aztec cultists. So that's that's another plot thread. Okay, so we have the plot thread with the women and the Aztec cultists, the plot with the deserters and the Aztec cultists, and the other plot thread is a rivalry between Sharpe and the Major Sharpe and the lieutenant, who is a member of the provost, who took one of Sharpe's men, who, because he looted a chicken, even though the village was deserted and chickens could be wild, Sharpe initially stopped him and punished him himself with corporal punishment. But then when he got back, the guy pushed issue and had the guy hung to death. And so Sharpe and this lieutenant never got along for the rest of the episode. So that's kind of what's at play. So let's. I don't think it's going to be that long an episode, but we'll see. As usual, thank you for ITV and whatnot for letting me talk about this while inhibition. While they will make a copyright notice, they won't strike and they'll let me play the chunks of the video I play. And maybe because I'm praising it or not, I don't know. We'll see. So this is basically the end of a battle. The British Rifle Regiment has ambushed from a bunch of French. They're trying to retreat. And there's supposed to be a bunch of redcoats helping them. But the riflemen. Now you should accept, by the way, even though we only see Sharpe's team of the chosen men, there's a bunch of other riflemen, other squads there, because he's a major. He wouldn't command one little squad. He would command a multitude of them that are there firing on him. So it's not like 6 guys taking out a whole troop. They just don't. They very rarely will show the others. You'll see them in bigger battle scenes, but you know they're there. They're just not like in the scene, in the camera. So his Sharpe first encounter is, Sharpe gets saved by, we get to see the big gunfire off. Harper saves Sharpe. And then we have the British Red Cloak doing the looting of the bodies and all that. And then, of course, they say the deserters, they're going to desert. And now Sharpe tried to order the man back into the uniform, but they outnumbered his guys, and he didn't want a bloodbath, which is why he wouldn't just order them and kill the guy in front of him. So he's like, okay, he let it go, and then he does strip him of the other rank. So here we go. Now they've gone out from that. They're looking through. They're just scouting, looking around. This is where they encounter the provost. And now the matter of the division of command. So the provost kind of answer to Wellington, but answer to a different. Wellington's the overall commander, but the provost has a specific mission that he can't directly countermand. And they're pushing this as a matter of respect my authority, So Sharpe gets a little payback they're attempting to smear Sharpe, but Sharpe asserts what's happened here is this. Okay? Sharpe outranks the lieutenant. So in the matter of, even though he's different command and the provost have a particular mission, Sharpe's word is enough to put the smear on the lieutenant. So the lieutenant, he apologized to the lieutenant for the way he was supposed to, but he put in enough that put the smear on the lieutenant that the colonel here can no longer just promote him willy-nilly. There's a verbal smear on the guy that he behaved dishonorably as well. So in terms of like in the modern day, this would have to be like written up, there'd be investigations. But in this type of thing where there's mostly nobility in the officer ranks, this type of smear on the honor matters. And if Wellington didn't bar duels, I think Sharpe. What's happening here is that Sharpe is trying to goad this guy into attempting to kill him, so he can say I'm self-defending myself. Okay, and if there were duels allowed, Wellington were allowing duels, I think Sharpe would challenge him to a duel. Okay, so I think that's kind of what this scene is portraying. That Sharpe is playing a political game and putting smear on this guy in the proper officer way of doing it, saying this guy as a ranking officer, and you have to take my word for I'm a ranking officer, and he's also saying, implying, I'm not implying, indicating I have Wellington's ear, you know. So that now this guy's been smeared as a lieutenant. In a way, he tried to smear Sharpe. These are deserters, and they get captured by the Aztec cultists. And now, you know, this is them finding out about the cultists have the deserters, and you know, the usual sort of stuff. And now the women show up. By the way, Sharpe has a romance with this chick. I like the older female character. Unfortunately, she gets killed. You know, I'll let see her stick around for a couple episodes. This is a nifty little shooting contest. It's originally going to be the Sharpe, the tall guy who was the best rifleman, marksman, but then Sharpe takes it up and has a sort of rifle duel with her, and it has a little nifty play out. You know. This is a deal being made between the Aztec cultists and Wellington. Now, I will give credit, okay? So this guy here, the guy playing the lead Aztec cultist, this is a strange episode. There's no Aztec cultist in the novel. That's not even a part of the novel, okay? It's obviously made up to this to change the plot enough, like I said. If that's the reason, if they did have to pay the actor, I understand them doing a totally deviant script because it's nothing like the novel. But he does really good playing this creepy character, okay? So that is one value of getting this. This actor here, let's look his name up. Let's see if we can find it out. Sharpe's Gold Cast. So I think this is El Casco, Abel Folk. Let's see if I can get a Abel Folk. The picture, I believe, that looks like him and older. Okay, he's done mostly Spanish work, which is fine. I think I've seen him. So I've seen some Spanish TV shows and movies. So I think I've seen him before. But he does a great job, this guy. Real creepy like, which you need to be for this role to make it work. You know, we advancing through here, usual stuff. And I always like the nice camera lighting. Now, so what happens here is the lady that I mentioned, they see Sharpe going out. They think he's going to look for their dad that they're looking for, our dad that they're looking for. They don't know he's on a secret mission about the deserters and the rifles. So they sneak off, and at first they say, well, Wellington sent us out here. You give us permission, we have a right to try to lie their way through it. But then they're stuck in the middle of the field, so Sharpe's like, just stay with us, and, you know, they encounter French. So I liked this battle scene that's about to happen. So the French are charging. They're mostly remember, we're still at the stage. If you wonder why they don't have guns, we're still at a stage where guns were still difficult to be had. Meaning, you had to have wealth to get the guns, and oftentimes the officers were trained very rarely with the gun compared to the infantrymen. And these are basically a bunch of cavalry and probably officers. So that they're charging, and the problem is they waited to charge, and Sharpe's got his men, the riflemen, set up in a position where they could where the bulk of the charging horses couldn't hurt them, and they had cover behind trees and could snipe the crap out of these guys. I like the camera work is good on this bat and this sort of close-in battle. Um, so it's, again, a good battle. And this is a French scouting patrol, basically trying to, basically, like, like as the French army is retreating, they're sort of covering the rear. Now, uh, some of Sharpe's guys take wounds. The wounds mysteriously don't affect them like a day later. That's common in this show, though. Sharpe's getting it on with the chick, the Sharpe romance, so to speak. The lieutenant sees him and you know thinks. Well, they don't tell us what. Well, it looks like you observe them doing it. So now they discover flayed human flesh. Now, this is something modern people might not be used to, but we've seen in an episode. These armies in the past, they had what we call camp followers. And a lot of people think camp follower means whores or whatever. No. Camp followers was a group of civilians who followed along with the army and provide all sorts of services, some of which were sexual, but also mending, doing laundry, cooking, medical services, letter writing, all sorts of stuff like that. And a lot of times the soldiers were conscripts, people like the camp followers. They wound up marrying some of the camp followers, having family with them. So you see, we see and so the armies are used to the families that were in the camp follower, who would normally be trailing behind the army with wagons and stuff and the logistics. Basically, behind the army would be the logistics train for the army and the camp followers, and so they would be, because they're part of the logistics setup, and that's kind of why we see the animals and the kids and the women. So these are deserters that Sharpe met in the beginning. They get the intelligence. She finds evidence from the father. That's a little bit of gold they get that the deserters allegedly had, which they had more, is what Sharpe turns into Wellington. So again, with the negotiating and all that, the usual crap. And now the deserters are in hand; they'll be taken back, and they discover that the women. They're going to discover that the women have separated, and now the provost will lead the deserters back. But the lieutenant says he's going to go with Sharpe. And now at this point, by the way, there's kind of a bridging of the gap between the lieutenant and Sharpe. There's that matter between them with the Sharpe's man that he had killed that would always be there, I think. But he's gained more respect for Sharpe because he's how effective he is in the field and the command, which is how Sharpe builds his respect. And that guy's shown when he can put up when it's time to shut up, he can put up, so he can fight in battle with them. So that's kind of a little bit of vibe that there's a little bridging of the gap going on. So you do feel for when this lieutenant gets killed. Basically, he's the first man in and he gets daggered to the heart. Throwing dagger to the heart. When he gets killed, you kind of feel like, okay, this guy is sacrificed. I mean, if Sharpe had been the first one to go, he might have got the dagger to the heart, Now the set up an ambush of the French. Here's the French. I believe these French guys get slaughtered, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Yep. So they found. So here's where we get the Aztec mystery. They find a journal of someone, and he's talking about about the Aztec cult and how this guy. The other thing about this lieutenant is he's an expert in the Americas, so he knows about the Aztecs. Like I guess this episode's really, like I said, it's really weird. It comes across more like an X-Files with not quite the supernatural. And they're reading about the Aztec cult practices, so setting up that these are evil people who need to be killed. Build up the creep factor, which is fine. This is where the mom gets captured. The mom and daughter get captured, and the mom gets killed by the deserters not back with Wellington. Give a speech. That's usual. Nothing weird there. And then the mom and the daughter are going to get caught by the Aztecs. They find something that was the father that they're looking for. That's his name. And just as they do that, they get captured by the Aztecs, and the mom gets killed. I like the mom's character. I would have liked to see her hang around a little more. She was kind of fun. The daughter's character is a generic hot chick that Sharpe gets to bang, So she's in there, and they get ready to human sacrifice her. Her dad's still alive. They find he's being converted to the cult, basically. This is a French guy who saw his men get their hearts cut out. He wants to surrender into British custody to avoid being killed by the Aztec cultists. And then Sharpe says, you got to redeem your honor. He goes in with them, and they battle. So again, this end battle where they use superior firepower and positioning to take out, and with a two-pronged ambush to take out these Aztec cultists. I enjoyed that. It was well thought out. They have the high ground, Anakin. Of course, there's the flayed flesh that they're putting on their flayed flesh god statue. They're gonna sacrifice. They're gonna flay her, cut her, and flay her. And basically that's our episode. And a wonderful ending where they're over the hills and far away as Sharpe has been walking to the hill. So that's our episode. A lot of good stuff in there. Two good battle scenes with the French charge against Sharpe and his men, and then the ambush, the sort of two-pronged ambush, take out the cultists. Really good scenes, okay? So the Aztec cult, the reason it's not stupid is because they made them suitably creepy to be valid bad guys, but there's nothing like this in the novel, so that from what I've read, okay? So I want to call this episode... it's as well put together as the previous episodes, but it kind of stands out as like a little weird and like a 3. Usually I think of most Sharpe episodes, all the Sharpe episodes I think of are 3.5 to 4.5s. This one I'm going to call a 2.75 out of 5 type of scale, maybe a 3 at parts, just because it's still well put together. The character is enjoyable. The good guys triumph over effective bad guys, but the cult thing is just a little weird, Anyway, my name is Matt. This has been our Rebel 73 review of Sharpe's Gold. Oh, one more thing. So Sharpe does something nifty. Now, he does seal up those caves full of gold. On one hand, because the cultist bodies are all in there, right? But now he and Harper and his men and his chosen men know where that gold is and come back after the war and claim it and be wealthy. I think that was the real reason for sealing that cave up, not to hide the evidence of the cult, Anyway, my name is Matt. This has been an Rebel 73 review. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a like. If you didn't, give me a dislike. If you have any questions, comment down below and whatnot. Share this video out, please. I'm getting good traction. Thank you and have a great day.